Welcome to the deep dive. We're going to be deep diving, obviously, into a really fascinating subject today.
Mm.
It's all about the amazing ways biology is being used out there in the real world.
Yeah,
We're talking everything from the medicine we take to the metals we mine, believe it or not.
absolutely.
And get this, our source material is actually your grade 12 biology textbook notes.
Really?
Yeah, but don't worry, we're going to make it way more interesting than just flipping through pages, I
I'm
promise.
sure.
So to kick things off, what's really cool about biology is that it's not just about, textbooks and
Oh,
microscopes.
definitely not. It goes way beyond that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really about understanding those like basic building blocks of life
Mm-hmm.
and then using that knowledge to solve problems,
Yeah.
real world problems.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today. So
Yeah.
first up, let's dive into something called microbial factories.
Okay.
Now, when you think of factories, you probably picture, giant buildings and assembly lines. But imagine this tiny organisms actually churning out life-saving medicines.
It's pretty incredible. Yeah.
It is incredible.
And it's a reality thanks to something called transgenic bacteria.
Transgenic bacteria.
Yeah, we've basically engineered these microscopic factories to produce really crucial medicines.
Okay.
Like insulin, human growth hormone, even things like clot-busting drugs
Mm.
that they use for heart attack victims.
Wait, so hold on a second. We're talking about taking bacteria, these tiny organisms we usually associate with getting sick,
Right.
and we're actually using them to create medicine that keeps us healthy.
Exactly. It might sound a little counterintuitive, but
It really does.
by inserting specific genes into the bacteria, we can kind of harness their cellular machinery to
Wow.
actually produce those human proteins
Okay.
that are vital for treating all sorts of conditions.
That is mind-blowing. It's like we've turned these microscopic enemies into allies in the fight for better health.
Yeah, I like that. I like that analogy a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And you mentioned before, it's not just limited to medicine, right?
Right.
You were saying something about agriculture as well?
Absolutely. The same principle can be applied to, boosting growth and production in livestock.
Okay.
So, for example, they use something called bovine somatotrophin to increase milk production in cows.
Really?
Yeah, and then there's porcine somatotrophin, which does the same thing for pigs.
Wow.
And both of these are actually produced by these amazing little microbial factories.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
These tiny organisms are making such a big impact. It's amazing.
they really are.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about another revolutionary application of biology antibiotics.
Okay, yeah.
And of course, no discussion of antibiotics would be complete without mentioning the incredible story of penicillin.
Oh, absolutely. The classic tale of Alexander Fleming and his accidental discovery,
Yeah.
really a
Right.
turning point in medical history.
Definitely a turning point, yeah. I remember learning about it in school, how a simple observation of mold growing on a petri dish
Right.
led to this life-saving drug.
Yeah.
But how did we go from that sort of accidental discovery to mass production?
Well, it wasn't quite as simple as just letting mold grow freely.
Right.
Fleming's observation was obviously crucial,
Yeah.
but it took years of research and development to figure out how to actually produce penicillin on a large scale.
I can imagine. So how did they finally crack it? What was the secret sauce, so to speak?
Well, the answer lies in something called industrial fermentation.
Industrial fermentation.
Yeah, it's kind of like creating the perfect five-star hotel for the penicillium mold to thrive and produce this miracle drug.
Right.
So we use these massive bioreactors, which are essentially giant tanks with carefully controlled conditions,
Okay.
to cultivate the mold and make sure we're getting optimal penicillin production.
That's incredible. So it really is like this delicate dance between biology and engineering, providing the perfect environment for these tiny organisms to work their magic.
It really is, yeah.
But isn't there more to it than just, growing the mold? I vaguely remember hearing something about different types of penicillin.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Penicillin, as effective as it is, has its limitations. Not all bacteria respond to it in the same way.
Oh, okay. So then how do we make sure penicillin stays effective against all these different bacterial threats?
Well, scientists have figured out how to actually chemically alter the penicillin molecule itself,
Okay.
tweaking it to be more effective against specific bacteria.
Interesting.
And this has actually led to what we call semi-synthetic penicillins, things like ampicillin, methicillin, oxacillin. You might have heard of some of those.
Yeah, vaguely. So it's like penicillin got an upgrade.
Cool.
Scientists took the original and they fine-tuned it to fight even more bacteria.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and this constant innovation is crucial,
Yeah.
in our ongoing battle against bacterial infections.
Absolutely. Speaking of battles, how exactly do antibiotics work against bacteria? Like, what's happening at the microscopic level?
Well, antibiotics actually have a few different ways of tackling bacteria.
Okay.
Some disrupt the production of the bacterial cell wall.
So they can't build their defenses.
Exactly, either stopping them from multiplying or sometimes even causing them to burst open.
Oh,
Other antibiotics interfere with protein synthesis.
protein synthesis.
Yeah, essentially halting bacterial growth that way.
So some antibiotics are like demolition crews, while others are like saboteurs, I guess,
That's a good analogy.
messing up the bacteria's essential processes.
Right.
But if they're so effective against bacteria, do they also affect our human cells?
That's a great question, and it really highlights how incredibly precise antibiotics are.
Okay.
They are designed to specifically target bacteria
Mm.
without actually harming human cells.
That's remarkable, but I have heard that, some people have allergic reactions to antibiotics.
Yeah, you're right. While antibiotics don't directly harm human cells, they can trigger side effects,
Right.
things like allergic reactions in some individuals.
So it's kind of a balancing act then,
It is.
fighting the harmful bacteria without causing unintended consequences.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, well, let's move on to another impressive example of biology and action vaccines.
Oh, yeah.
It's like we've learned to train our bodies to fight back before the enemy even shows up.
That's a great way to put it. Vaccines are a prime example of preventative medicine, right?
Yeah.
Instead of treating a disease after it strikes, we're essentially preparing our bodies to defend against it beforehand.
Okay, that's amazing, but break it down for us. How do vaccines actually work?
So essentially, vaccines contain these harmless fragments of a disease-causing organism, like let's say a virus or a bacteria.
Okay.
And when these fragments are introduced into the body, they trigger the immune system to create antibodies. And yeah, these are specific defenses that are tailored to fight that particular threat.
So it's like giving our immune system a wanted poster.
Mhm.
So it knows exactly who the enemy is and how to fight it if it ever shows up.
I love that analogy. That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is that once the immune system is trained, it remembers the enemy.
Right.
And it can mount a swift defense if we ever encounter the actual disease.
That's incredible. It's like giving our bodies a secret weapon against disease.
Exactly.
And we have vaccines for so many diseases these days. It's incredible.
We do, yeah. Things like whooping cough, typhoid fever, cholera, tuberculosis, just to name a few.
Wow.
All diseases that we can effectively prevent thanks to vaccines.
That's amazing.
And even diseases that are caused by toxins have met their match.
Oh, hey.
Like tetanus and diphtheria vaccines actually use these inactivated toxins called toxoids to train the immune system.
That's so cool. It's amazing to think how many lives have been saved and how much suffering has been prevented through the power of vaccines. It's really incredible.
It really is.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about biosensors, which kind of sound like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
They do, a little bit, but biosensors are very real, and they're becoming increasingly common in all sorts of fields.
Okay.
Essentially, they're devices that merge biology and technology to detect and measure specific substances.
So they're like super sensitive detectors,
Yep.
able to pick up on even the tiniest traces of things.
Exactly.
But how do they actually work?
Well, think of a biosensor as having three main parts.
Sure. Okay.
First, you have the bioreceptor, which is the biological element.
Mm-hmm.
It acts like a highly specialized detective.
Okay.
It could be an enzyme, an antibody, a piece of DNA, even a whole cell.
Wow.
And it interacts very specifically with the substance being detected, which we call the analyte.
So the bioreceptor is trained to recognize one specific target, kind of like a lock and key.
Yeah, exactly. And when the bioreceptor finds its target, it triggers a specific biological response,
Okay.
like a change in pH or heat or light. And this is where the second part comes in, the transducer.
Okay, the transducer.
Yeah, it translates that biological response into an electrical signal that we can actually measure.
So it's like a translator converting the language of biology into something our instruments can understand.
Precisely.
That's really cool.
And then the third part is the reader instrument, which takes that electrical signal and displays it in a way that we can easily interpret.
Got it.
Yeah,
So it's like having this microscopic detective force at our disposal.
I like that, yeah.
What kind of things can these biosensors actually detect?
Oh, the possibilities are vast. Yeah. They can detect everything from pollutants in water
Okay.
to specific components in beer, flavor compounds in food, even pathogens and toxins.
Wow. That's quite a it's like a whole new world of detection is opening up thanks to these biosensors.
It really is.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Now, let's switch gears to a field where biology meets crime-solving forensic science.
Oh, cool.
It's where DNA becomes the ultimate truth teller.
Yeah, I love forensic science. It's so fascinating.
It is fascinating.
It really relies heavily on those biological principles and techniques.
It does. I've always been intrigued by forensic science. It's like piecing together a puzzle.
Yeah.
But instead of, cardboard pieces, we're using DNA.
Exactly.
So how exactly does biology play a role in solving crimes?
Well, forensic biologists analyze biological evidence found at crime scenes, things like blood, saliva, hair.
Right.
And one of their most powerful tools is DNA fingerprinting.
DNA fingerprinting, that's where they analyze someone's DNA to identify them, right?
Exactly.
But how does that actually work?
Well, it involves a few steps.
Okay.
First, we have to isolate and extract the DNA from the biological sample.
Mm-hmm.
Then we use these special enzymes called restriction enzymes to cut the DNA into fragments.
Okay.
And then these fragments are amplified using a technique called PCR, which creates millions of copies of the DNA fragments.
Oh, wow. So it's like taking this tiny clue and magnifying it so we can see it better, analyze it better.
Exactly. And the key to DNA fingerprinting lies in the fact that these DNA fragments, which we call VNTRs, vary in length from person to person.
VNTRs. What are those?
VNTR stands for a variable number tandem repeats.
Okay.
Basically, they are regions in our DNA where a specific sequence of nucleotides is repeated.
Right.
But the number of repeats is different between individuals, so it creates a unique pattern for each person.
Ah, so it's like a genetic barcode.
Exactly.
That's unique to each individual.
Exactly. And once the DNA fragments are amplified, they're separated by size using a technique called gel electrophoresis,
Okay.
which creates a visual pattern of bands, and this pattern is the individual's DNA profile.
So what you're saying is everyone has a unique DNA fingerprint that can be used to identify them.
Exactly. And here's the mind-blowing part. The odds of two individuals sharing the same DNA profile are incredibly low, like 1 in 10 billion, unless they're identical twins, of course.
That's incredible. So it's almost like a guaranteed identification then.
It is. It's been a game changer for forensic science.
Definitely.
And DNA fingerprinting isn't just used to identify criminals, it's also crucial for paternity testing and personal identification,
Okay.
especially in cases of disasters or missing persons.
That makes sense. It's incredible how such a tiny molecule like DNA can hold so much information
Is.
and have such a profound impact on our lives.
It really is.
And managing and analyzing all those DNA profiles must be a massive task.
It is, which is where bioinformatics comes in.
Bioinformatics?
Yeah, it's a whole field dedicated to collecting, storing, and analyzing all that complex biological data, including DNA profiles.
Okay.
So thanks to bioinformatics, we have these vast databases of DNA profiles, and we can use sophisticated software to compare and analyze them, which helps to solve crimes and identify individuals with incredible accuracy.
Wow. Okay, so from bacteria creating medicines to DNA cracking cases, we've covered a lot of ground.
Right.
But there's even more.
Yeah.
What about biomining?
Ah, yes. Biomining, where biology and mining intersect.
Okay.
So as high-grade ores become more and more scarce,
Yeah.
we're turning to microbes to help us extract those valuable metals from low-grade ores.
From low-grade ores.
Yeah, this process is called microbiological mining.
Microbes mining for metals. That sounds like something out of a fantasy novel.
I know, right? It's pretty
How
amazing.
does that even work?
So one of the key techniques is called biohydrometallurgy,
Biohydrometallurgy.
using microorganisms to extract metals from the ores.
Okay.
A prime example of this is the bacterium Thiobacillus ferroxidans.
Okay, that's a mouthful. What's so special about Thiobacillus ferroxidans?
Well, this bacterium loves acidic environments,
Okay.
and it has this remarkable ability to oxidize sulfur.
Uh-huh.
And that process actually releases pure metals, like copper and iron.
So they essentially eat the sulfur and leave behind pure metals.
You could say that, yeah. So for example, when Thiobacillus ferroxidans oxidizes copper sulfide in the presence of oxygen,
Okay.
it releases pure copper, sulfate, and energy.
Wow.
The same principle applies to iron oxide. The bacteria oxidize it, releasing pure iron, sulfate, and energy.
It's like alchemy.
Right.
But instead of a philosopher's stone, we have these incredible bacteria.
Exactly.
So besides copper and iron, what other metals can we extract using bacteria?
Well, the potential is vast.
Yeah.
Bacteria could hold the key to extracting things like uranium, arsenic, lead, zinc, cobalt, even gold.
Wow, so bacteria might be the answer to unlocking these vast reserves of metals that are currently out of reach using traditional mining methods.
That's the hope.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's important to note, though, that biomining is still under development, and there are definitely challenges to overcome before it becomes widely adopted.
Mhm.
But the potential is truly exciting.
It certainly is. We've talked about bacteria creating medicine, DNA solving crimes, and now bacteria mining for metals. It's clear that biology is shaping the world around us in ways we never imagined.
Absolutely. And the most exciting part is that we've only just scratched the surface of what's possible.
That's right.
As our understanding of biology continues to expand, who knows what other incredible applications we'll discover.